gang is all here, and I'm so very, very thankful that we have this opportunity. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we're able to use our time well. I shared this morning that the W. Haywood Burns Institute is here with us today, that we have the opportunity to reconvene and for you to share an update with us and help us as we think forward to what our work has been and what our work will be. The commissioners are aware of the work that we've done with you in the past with Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative when we began, and Burns Institute did our readiness assessment and helped us to think through the possibilities. And of course, that has resulted in a huge amount of work that we have been able to engage around and decisions that we have made, leading to what we are continuing to build as a better future for young people in Ramsey County. And now we've been engaged in an 18-month process together that we're looking forward to hearing more about in terms of the work that we have done and plan to do as we think through the bureaucracies that have been involved in the past in maintaining structures that have resulted in disparities. And our work to build equity in Ramsey County requires very thoughtful work around engaging with those bureaucracies in a different way. So we want to thank you for the work that you've done, that you've invited us into. We look forward to the journey continuing that we're on. And with that, I'd just like to ask the county manager for any comments before we turn it over to Francis.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I want to especially thank Dr. Allwood and Deputy County Manager Scott Williams, as well as Zach Hilton for their key roles in this whole 18-month process and the leadership they've provided. And I would just acknowledge that as we built the idea around our transforming systems together work and how do you get under issues that are really tough and baked in around us, and as we thought about going beyond the justice system, there was a conversation that started with Burns one night over a dinner where we were having a conversation about justice system outcomes alone don't get it done. And that doesn't mean they're not important, and it doesn't mean you can't stay focused on it, but how do we go farther? And my hope is that they've seen that Ramsey County is a place that wants to push the envelope on that and be a part of that with them and with community. And I'm really excited for the check-in today.
So let me apologize, because we have not yet introduced ourselves. So I'm Tony Carter, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 4.
Mary Jo McGuire, County Commissioner, District 2.
Nicole Frethem, County Commissioner, District 1.
Rafael Ortega, District 5.
Victoria Reinhardt, District 7.
Jessica Madison Steele, District 3.
We have a few people out here, a couple. Okay.
That's you, Prince.
Prince Corbett, County Manager's Office.
He thinks he doesn't have to introduce
my bad.
himself.
Zachary Hilton, County Manager's Office.
Melissa Dearmont, Commissioner McGuire's Office.
Thank you. All right.
I'm going to turn it over.
Scott Williams, Deputy County Manager for Safety and Justice, and after we're done with the intro, I'm going to step back and make room for Zach up here. I think Zach's been a huge part of this. So.
Dr. Mike Scott with the W. Haywood Burns Institute.
And I'm James Bell. I'm the founding president of the W. Haywood Burns Institute. So should we proceed?
I think so. Zach is going to join us up here.
I want Zach to observe today. This is the group that's been leading.
All right. Thank you.
So, on behalf of our staff at the Haywood Burns Institute, we are pleased to be invited to this briefing for you guys. I want to send our best wishes to Commissioner McDonough. He was with us in Montgomery, and I want to send our best wishes to him. We understand this balance of people like you that get a ton of information. You want it kind of quick, but you want it thorough, and you want it now, but you want to understand it. And so we're going to try to make that balance.
He knows us so well.
That's right. So we are going to try to be comprehensive but brief so that you have at least enough of a context to understand what we're doing and leave time for you to take your precious time to ask us questions. So we're going to get right into it. So just wanted to give you, you have these in front of you. Just want to give you an introduction to who we are. We have 20 years experience. We've engaged with professionals and directly impacted people. When I started the Burns Institute previously, I have been an attorney representing young people, and what I always thought is that the voices of the people who are most impacted, because children often can't speak for themselves, are actually not a part of it. And we have taken that as we've expanded out beyond children to adults and other systems. We move beyond tools and technology. We at the Burns Institute believe that reform has happened over the last 20 years in human services, not in justice only, schools, child welfare, other human services departments, health. We've gotten, to ACEs and trauma, and we've talked about the social determinants of health. All of these have happened in the last 20 years. But what we have found is after those reforms, we still have people of color and poor people who are mostly still impacted disproportionately by these human service systems. And so we believe that the next 20-year journey is to engage the structural roots of public services and to get us towards well-being and thriving. We have been, as you can see, in 300 local jurisdictions across 50 states, and we've worked in 3 First Nations tribal communities, one that we're working in Leech Lake here in Minnesota. So as Ryan mentioned, because he has been to our meetings, is that those of us that are working in the justice sector believe that reform in that sector must transcend just the workings of justice. It is child welfare. It is transit. It is housing. My good friend Angela Glover-Blackwell, who runs Policy Link in Oakland, California, she used to talk about justice in transit and justice in those things, and I would be like, nobody wants to talk, those aren't civil rights issues. And she would go, oh yes they are. And now people are talking about justice in water. You know what I mean? And so all these things, right. So she was ahead of the curve, we've caught up. And so we know that, in fact, justice must transform just that sector. Now, I am not going to have time to go through these 4 conundrums. If we talk about them in the Q&A, we can do that. But these 4 conundrums are what we have been meeting here in Ramsey for 18 months to address. And I'll just go through really quickly. One is justice, as you know, the iconography of justice is a blindfolded woman. And so oftentimes, the justice sector says it's race neutral and colorblind. So the question is, how can we talk about race and ethnicity in a system that is race neutral and colorblind? So the justice sector will admit to the race effects. We have Hmong people, we have African Americans, we have Latinos, we have Native Americans that are disproportionately in our systems extremely, but no one's going to raise their hand and say, and I'm the purveyor of that disparity. So the first question that we deal with at Burns is, how do you engage race and ethnicity in a system that says it's race neutral? Are you bringing a cure for a disease we don't have? Secondly, is that the justice sector, the public safety sector, as you guys know better than me, eats up a large part of the county's budget. And so how do we engage the money that's in the justice sector that in some places is taken out of other services in the county and then reinvest that? The third is the way government is structured oftentimes is not built to fund how communities transform. It's in silos. Parks and Rec comes with their budget. Health Department comes with their budget. No offense, Paul. The other people come with their budget. Everybody, justice, the probation department, the court, people come with their budgets, and they all want, nobody says, we're doing a great job, so shrink our budget. Everybody is doing a great job, and they want their budget big. And so the question then is, how do we make sure that the budgeting in silos gets to the families in the way that we want? And that was the conversation we had with transforming systems with the TST. And then the fourth is, it's very difficult to engage communities. Usually people who are in professions and have gone to school, they believe in communities, but they actually feel like they know better. And so how can we structure that dynamic differently? So moving quickly, we see that as we've just talked about, there are two frameworks in which you can engage human service work. One is the harm reduction framework, which we at Burns say is what's been happening in the last 20 years. That is not to say that reform isn't important. So if you are looking at the jail and you're trying to reduce that population, and you go to some form of electronic monitoring, that is a decent reform. That is some type of reform. That person is not sitting in a cell. But at the same time, you can't say that by putting them on electronic monitoring, you're making their life better. So the point is that the tools and technologies, they are helpful, but oftentimes they are oversold in terms of what they can deliver. And so what we're saying is where we are now in the evolution of human services is to get to the structural well-being approach. And that is that these tools and technologies can be helpful, but what we need to do is to get at the structures that are there, that are serving people and making sure that they meet the needs of transformation. And so that looks at their very composition, how they're structured, how these bureaucracies exist, and we can talk more about that. But what I want to say for you to hear before you guys have to leave, I want you to understand this. Raquel and I want to say to you strongly, we have been hired by Los Angeles County, their probation department, which is the largest in the country, to be redesigned. The Board of Supervisors, your colleagues there, put out an ordinance, said we've tried to reform our huge juvenile justice system for 15 years, and it hasn't worked. And so we're going to tear it down and build it up again responsibly. And so they have hired us to help them do that redesign. San Francisco County has hired us to close their juvenile hall, the first major city in the country to actually close their juvenile detention facility by 2021. The reason I bring those up is when we have gone to those two places and they have said, okay, as our technical assistance provider, who can we look to that's done this before? What I can say is that is a very short shopping trip. You are not going to see many stores giving what you want. But what you guys should know is what we've done here with Paul, Scott, Zachary, Ryan, Elizabeth, in the last 18 months, and folks from the community, is a beacon for the rest of the country. Now, you guys may not know that, you may not feel it. Commissioner Carter may have told you guys some stuff, you may have heard some language, but I want you to get it. And I think Commissioner McDonough, when he went with us to Montgomery, he got it, which is why he wanted us to come today. So I want you to understand your position nationally, is that what we're doing here, we are taking to those other places because you guys are trying to take this roadmap to well-being. And that is, we're going from harm reduction to how do we get to well-being. And this site in Ramsey forced us to not use words, but to come up with this graphic. So this is our little, what we call ghetto fabulous graphic. It's not really high tech. And essentially, it shows you the roadmap that we're going on. And I want to commend Commissioner Carter, because if you see the little diamonds there, I call those speed bumps. And she said, no, those aren't speed bumps, those are service stations. So we are not going to be obstacles. We're going to stop, we're going to fill up with gas, we're going to go get some food and keep rolling. And as you can see, I don't want to spend a bunch of time, but the 4 conundrums are in the bottom, and we're moving with values and the way that we're looking at culture, and we're moving to this roadmap of power sharing, strategic interagency collaboration. And so the way it is now, you can see person, family, community, and systems are on the outside of that. A lot of people who get served by these systems don't feel like they can impact them, and they're not heard. And so what we're trying to do is take that little dot and move it in. These are some of the developmental milestones that we've gone through. I don't want to spend a bunch of time, but this is what we've been doing for 18 months. If you have questions about it, we will do it. And this is our cross-sector. We have focused on zip codes and the zip codes that contribute most. So I know that there are commissioners here that represent the suburbs or may not represent inner city, St. Paul. But what we're learning here in terms of those county departments are relevant there. If you were to take some of that into your districts, I'm sure that in your districts in the suburbs, there are people that are more highly stressed than other people with regards to this. This kind of thing could be done in those suburban parts of the county as well. And so once we did get to the zip codes, we then brought in the city. We started out at the county level, and we're bringing in the mayor's office, the council member that represents the zip codes we're in, the St. Paul, the police department, and so we are doing, and now what we're doing after 18 months is now we're bringing in community. And there's a way in which we do that, we can answer that in question. And so we then went to, how is this different? And I will turn this over to my colleague Raquel. What we wanted to know is, when we start doing this work, most people, especially in America, when you start talking about race, you think about it personally. You know, it's this sense that race is a binary. Am I a racist or am I not a racist? I mean, that is usually how the conversation happens. What we're saying is we're talking about structures. We're talking about structural, institutional ways that may manifest themselves disparately with race. And so what we wanted to do was curate materials, and I'll have Raquel take it from here.
Thank you. And what I'm just going to walk you all through is briefly some of those off-ramps or service stations that were on the roadmap that we have actually engaged here in Ramsey County. And one of the first or foundational pieces we thought was very important is for the collaborative that you saw, the strategic collaborative that we, of cross-sector folks, is that it was important that everyone have a collective understanding of structural racism and common language, definitions, and how, as Brian Stevenson from the Equal Justice Initiative says, history lives in the present. And providing the multimedia materials to be able to make that link from history to the current and contemporary context of not only youth justice, but the provision of social services in our country. So we provided multimedia curated materials that really seem to engage people, and in some cases open people's eyes. Some people were had lived it, are aware of it, but it helped have people be on the level playing field, so to give us that foundation to start the work. After coming together with the materials and having common language and understanding, we also engaged folks on norms. You know, sometimes you have community agreements, but we actually spent time on how we were going to engage with each other. You know, one of the kingpins for a lot of reform efforts is collaboration, yet in many jurisdictions, at best, there's a patina of collaboration. We really wanted to be able to get deep with folks that may not have heretofore sat together and really started thinking and visioning to have collective outcomes. So we established norms, but even more importantly, we worked with the group that took us 3 different convenings to establish values. One of the things that we've learned is that bureaucracies are very good at objectives and checking off the box. And okay, we got past that, we're good to go. We wanted to establish values that were going to help the group make value-based decisions, not fear-based decisions, but more importantly, how are those values going to start living in these cross sectors to help lead to the design of change of where we're going. So as you see here, and you can read, those are the values that the group actually came up with and what we're working from to be able to help design, which we'll say more of. And after having established those values, we actually went through an exercise. You know, you think about, there's person, role, and system when we think about what we do. Our own personal biases, our role within our roles and what we bring to the table of what we do day to day, and then systems, the structural piece, which we are spending a lot of time on. But we thought it was also important to address, and we do think it's important to address the person and the role. With regards to the person, we actually did an activity on structural racism self-awareness. And then what we did with role is, as you see here, is mental models. And those are stories or assumptions we tell ourselves that guide our perceptions, behaviors, and decisions, and engage folks with a real-life case study and had people start telling us, what do you think are some of the mental models? And it was really interesting to hear some of the assumptions that people came to the table. So part of it is starting to build that muscle to be able to recognize how we come to the table, not only the structural pieces, but as in person and role as well. And as James had mentioned, we did an impressionistic as well as a quantitative exercise to come to our focus geographic and demographic areas, and those are the zip codes that that were agreed on by the collective learning community. And please understand that we recognize that families don't live within the confines of prescriptive boundaries. So this gives us a start, because we always say take a piece. Take a piece, otherwise you're going to be wringing your hands and we're never going to get anything done. So we wanted to be able to just narrow it down to certain zip codes with that caveat that I stated. And we understand that the overrepresentation for both race and ethnicity may be more for others, but this group felt it was very important to be inclusive with the large racial and ethnic representation here in the county, thus Asian, Black, Latinx, or Latino, Latina, and Native American. Lastly, and not lastly, but one of the other big pieces that we were able to accomplish last year was actually having the cross sectors come to the understanding and realization that the way that resources, in this case financial and money resources, are being allocated, and how those resources and the services are being provided isn't working. So it wasn't us doing this, it was everybody at the table coming together to realize that that one on the right is families not understanding how to navigate the system and having to go to duplicative services to try to at least get to a place where they're able to sustain, let alone not even meeting a thriving and healthy place.
They outed themselves to each other.
Yes.
We went through an exercise by department to say, so tell me, how does your department work? And other people in the department would go, that isn't what your department does. This is what, I mean, and so it wasn't us. We just were everybody around the table. And whenever it was functional, it was because it was a workaround. It was like, well, I called Betty, who called Bill, who could get this person this service, you know what I mean? And so it was revealed through them, not us, how, and that's really a big part of how we got to where we're going to be now.
And these were the directors from your department.
From your department.
So kudos that it was, they came to this realization and collectively with each other.
Because we built a safe space.
Right.
That's why they come to the meetings. The spaces are very safe.
And brave.
So we're about done, and what I want to say is where we're going now. So what that has taken, what you've seen is a very quick process that we've gone through, that Commissioner Carter, thank you for coming, Zachary, those folks, Elizabeth, everybody that has come to, Paul, you know, we've gone through a process that basically says the way we deliver human services here is structurally racist. We're not trying to be personally racist, but the structures are not delivering what we need to. They are inefficient, and they could be done better. That is a huge deal for a county, the electeds and appointeds, mostly appointeds, to say that, and to say, and we want to do better. So I want you guys to register that. That's a first, right? Very many electeds and appointeds will not do that. And so then where are we going? So now in 2020, we had our first meeting yesterday. We are through 2020. We have a meeting about every 5 weeks. The meetings are 3 to 3.5 hours long. And people are there. Even Commissioner Carter's not on her phone. People are there and they're with us in it. And so what we're trying to do is what's new, what will be transformed, and this is what we mean when Raquel says values that are actually not fear-based, but what is gone? What do we say as a minimum we as a county don't want to do, and how do we get there? So this is what we're trying to go on in this reimagined ecosystem. And what we say all the time is we don't know if we can get there. We don't know if a county can do the kind of structural adjustments needed to be able to serve families in a way that is more coordinated and less siloed and doesn't have these power dynamics that go on. And I just wanted you to give these national implications. What is happening, what you guys are doing, and you are in leaders of, It's not I said yesterday, it's not a movement yet, it's not even a trend yet, but it is definitely growing. So in California, our governor has moved the Department of Juvenile Justice. He has said to them, and moving it into Health and Human Services. This notion that punishment for young people, we can do better than putting them in these rooms and locking them up as a ways to keep them accountable. You might have read about the judge in Franklin County, Ohio, that says, I'm eliminating my probation department. She's killing all those job descriptions. She wants them to reapply with new job descriptions and eliminating 10 positions. So the headline is she's getting rid of the department. She's not getting rid of the department, but she's adjusting it. What I'm saying is, people are saying across the country, the status quo is not delivering for us. Houston, Harris County, Paul has been there. You might have seen that picture after the 2016 election of the 17 black female judges that are now sitting in Harris County, and they have said we should be doing something better. Seattle, King County is getting 0 youth detention. Los Angeles, I've talked to you about. New York City, even on the adult side, the Rikers Island is closing now. They're building 5 new facilities, but they're not going to rebuild 5 Rikers. There is going to be changes and adjustments as the nation figures, what do we do if we want to try to serve people and keep people safe? Can we do this differently? And Ramsey County, we see you guys here. You can see what you've done, and you're transforming systems together. You're reimagining justice for youth. So while you guys may not feel it at this level, I want you guys, if you go to NACO meetings or whenever you go to county commissioner meetings, to say that actually we are in the forefront of this movement. And there you can see San Francisco County closing their juvenile hall by 2021, when this board of supervisors, county commissioners, found out we were spending $256,000 a kid and the recidivism rate was horrible. So now, what does that mean? How do we repurpose the jobs? What do we do with the unions? How do we I mean, all of this is what is in front of us. And we at Burns are leaning into these questions. These unions have middle-class jobs. They have sent their kids to college on these jobs. We can't repurpose that job and then go tell them to work for a third of the money, right? So what do we do? And so, and we can't, so our position is we have to figure it out. And so with that, we'll stop and and thank you all for your attention and answer any questions that you might have. And once again, really thank you for this opportunity to address you. We understand this is a precious opportunity.
What a fire hose.
Wow.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the information that you've shared, and I know the commissioners around the circle are going to have some things to say. I just want to add that as you showed the chart, the last chart, and the various changes that are happening, you know that we have been involved in this work together for a long period of time, and that the information about the work that this county board has been doing has been in many different ways shared at the National Association of Counties, with James out in California, and talking with a gathering of counties, which he called together in order to share what is the role of counties, understanding the manner in which we have leverage, particularly where budget is concerned, in changing our systems. You know, certainly some of the changes that you see here are inspired by changes that have happened here. You know, I can't tie it to the time exactly when we were talking, but changes in where juvenile justice sits, for example, have been inspired by structural changes that are here, as well as moving toward a health-focused
wheel.
model.
You got your
Department structure.
Yes.
Your department structure, we
Yes.
take that all over the
Yes.
country. People go,
Huh?
how long did it take to do
I
that?
carry it in my
Your
briefcase
budgets
at all times.
Right. I mean, that is a big deal for people.
It is.
We're in another model site, another Lucas County, Toledo, which is smaller than you guys, is on this same journey like you guys. They only have 3 county commissioners in Lucas, and it's a county of, you know, not much. I think the total is $600 million or something like that, and they have 33 departments. So when they saw the wheel, when we go to these people, like, somebody created that department for a reason. They got business cards, they got ink on the door, you know what I mean? And it's like 33 departments, right? How do you reorganize that in a way? So, I mean, so that wheel, I can just tell you that I saw was on the PowerPoint before we started, is a big deal. So congratulations.
So again, just thank you and the recognition that something really big is happening in Ramsey County. It exists throughout the United States. Thank you for your work and for the structure that we've been provided by administrative leadership and that you continue to implement. We have some people that came into the room. I know that Mary Jo has a comment and others do too. But I just want to go around and make sure we know who's here with us and thank you for being here. So everyone that is behind the county manager.
Me Chang, Policy Planning. Xia Shang, County Manager.
Matt Hill with Commissioner Carter's office.
Sheena Denny, Commissioner Clemens' office.
You were there, right?
Katrina Moss, Integrated Health and Justice Administration.
Thank you, and Alfred. Thank you, I think that's it. Turn to Mary Jo McGuire.
Oh, man, oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, and thank everyone in the room here. I know we couldn't have done it without all the great work, and I was lucky, and a number of us were lucky to be here before the big structural change, and then during it. And when people say, what's new at Ramsey County, I still am not tired of saying, well, we restructured our entire county. And, but you know, we were just talking this morning in the board meeting. The greatest challenge to being great is when you're good. So we still are pushing ourselves. This is who's the person that quoted that you talked about this morning?
Gil.
Gil Post, right. We are always challenging ourselves to continue to be better. So we can't rest on the fact that we've restructured our county and now there's a lot of work to be done. So I love to hear everything that you're doing. I am so grateful, and yes, we were super grateful that we were able to close our auditorium town and that we're able to continue this work. I don't know if it's another workshop or something. I would sort of love to know what are our steps moving forward. When do we get to see this work? And as it moves forward, I totally support it all. And I will just make one comment, and I know this is a start, and we're just taking a piece of the pie that we can work on. And so when I see strategic cross-sector collaboration, community, county, and city, just acknowledging that we have 17 suburban cities. So that'll be our next good challenge, about how we can be a model of how we've engaged our large city. But we have, we have all these cities that are dealing with a lot of these issues, and we have a lot of diversity in some of our cities. And we're struggling with all these same issues in our smaller cities also. So just put that out there, as I know you all are aware of that. But I don't know if someone just wants to comment on sort of how are we going to be moving forward, and just to again say thanks for the movement so far, and just a little bit of a roadmap of what this is going to look like.
So thank you for that.
I'm sorry, I was just pointing to the county manager because that may also be a question you would like to address.
Yeah. But
Ryan,
I'm happy to have
go first shot?
I'm happy to have, yeah. I'm just curious. I know there's a lot of work to be done.
From our perspective,
From
our perspective, as the people that have tried to get this opportunity, and for you guys and Toledo and a few other places. So here's where we're going. Is what we're trying to do, and this is why I think it could be helpful in those other suburban places or those cities, is what we're trying to do is match the dollars of the bureaucratic departmental services to the actual families and places that need it in a non-siloed way. So just as an example, the probation officer in Los Angeles started our first meeting with, we have 2 million children in Los Angeles, 18 and below, okay? Just 2 million children around. That's from Malibu, Beverly Hills, to South LA, East LA. We got 2 million kids. But of that 2 million, 5,000 are touched by our department. And of that 5,000 that are touched by our department, really our most extremists, the ones that use our services the most, are 805. So what we're trying to do is say, if we were to take the child welfare department, the probation department, parks and rec, and this could be in any suburban city, and we were to look at how much money they are saying they're using to serve those people, for 805 families, I bet you we're at almost $1 billion. in terms of not going to those families, but that are being spent, quote, in service of those families. And so what we're trying to do is get the county's budget to kind, not like mine, but kind of be like your budget, because you're more responsible, like your personal budget, that you say, this, nope, we cannot buy a Lexus, we have to get a Subaru. We just, you know, we do our own family budgets in that same way. And so that is ultimately the process. We're trying to take these departments, and our department heads are coming through that. But they can give you a million reasons why they can't. There's confidentiality. Well, the federal guidelines say that. You have to do this. We have to do, you know, and so the question that is unanswered for us, Commissioner, is can we break those silos and actually direct it? So we have done, if we could put, we have done, these departments have done the yeoman's work of breaking down what percentage of their county budget is being spent on the people the most, which was not easy for them to get. And so with Ryan's help and Zach and all these people, and now the city, Mayor Carter, those folks are getting us similar things. The DA, the police departments are saying this is how much money we're spending on this number of people. So if you're a school teacher, you know 28 of your kids are not the problem. It's those 2 that you're spending all your time and money on. What do we do about that? So sorry for that long-winded, but that's our journey this year, is can we take and de-silo some of these funds? And the other thing I will say is, just so that you know, we're not at implementation. What we're talking about is designing. So nobody's at political risk here that we did some big jack-in-the-box thing and whoop, I'll pop something. No, we're gonna say if we design it this way, what would we do?
I appreciate the question. Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, I think there's a lot, it's a multifaceted answer, and so I'm gonna let Dr. Bell's answer stand for a lot of it. When I sit there, it's always great to have a different vantage point while others are up here too, and you see the slides from that spot. And on the roadmap, what I would say is, you know, we're entering into that participatory budgeting phase through the $2 and $3 million investments through transforming systems together in a way that could have implications for a $750 million system on a deep level. But there's a lot that comes along with that. I mean, by April, we're hoping to be back here and with an update to the board about how that process is going. But there's a level of trust building still going on. I would just share about, well, who gets to decide on the final people on this? And it's, well, the board has to have oversight over that. Well, we're community here, we want to have a voice. And we're building trust every day as we go. And that's a part of the learning. And so on the success spots, I think process does greatly matter through this. And there are going to be programmatic opportunities along the way for wins, whether it be a justice system reform, whether it be bringing Parks and Rec in through 21st Century Parks this year in a way they haven't been before, whether it be TST. But alongside that, it's like the broader change management of the way we collectively hear, but everybody else talks about this work. And if we're honest right now, we started in departments that were ready, but not all departments are necessarily listed here. Right. And even if we went to those departments and went down 4 or 5 levels, it would be a different conversation. And so for me, success has to be multifaceted. You need to see programmatic wins alongside trust building with community and the broader transformative change happening at all levels in the organization about how we think about structural barriers to progress.
Commissioner Reinhardt has been very patient. Before I move there, though, just one thing, and that is, as the county manager has indicated, this is a parallel process. We're moving down the road together with Barnes Institute, motivating and not cajoling, but helping us to change. And we have our 2-year budget process. And in that process, we're moving quickly toward results-based accountability, and not only knowing what is done for who and at what cost, but is anybody better off? So when we talk about boiling this down to who's really solved, who's really served, you know, it really is in the end about, is anybody better off? And that's the process we're moving toward. Thank you for your patience. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, as you are talking, I cannot help but think about the fact that hopefully, if you haven't already read my dissertation.
Yes, you gotta read it.
Because it is an ounce of prevention, taxpayer costs avoided through preventing crime. And I was elected in 1996, and in 1998, this idea that I had about breaking down those silos. I mean, when I was running, I talked about it. I thought there were 5 departments that were directly involved with juvenile crime prevention. When I came in, to say that it was a hurdle to get over, to get the county manager to even, he was not even around then probably.
A glint in somebody's eye, right?
Yeah, you were.
Okay, you were in grade school. But anyway, but the fact of the matter is, I literally went into a meeting with the department heads and the county manager said to them, "We are here to talk Victoria out of this. Because we cannot do it."
What year was that, please?
Pardon me?
What year was that?
1997.
Wow.
And I said, well, then you don't know me very well, because that's not happening. And really tried to set up what we called an outcome-based program area budgeting model in the area of secondary juvenile crime prevention.
Wow.
We changed the name to ACE, All Children Excel. But the idea was that we needed to break down those barriers. And the first thing that I asked for was an inventory, which again, I mean, this was like pulling teeth.
I believe it.
And they finally did this inventory through corrections and found that in the area of secondary juvenile crime prevention only, which we thought we could measure the best, there were 33 different programs, 11 different departments, and they had no idea
what they were doing.
What they were doing.
Yep. That's right.
So the idea of an outcome-based budget and really measuring the results, I mean, this county has changed so much in those years, in all kinds of ways, but we have gotten there. And the reason that I did my dissertation on taxpayer costs avoided through preventing crime, and I went with only the direct stuff, law enforcement, probation, courts,
yeah.
You know, incarceration, children in need of protection that were a result of criminal behavior. And it was for children under 9, because of course in Minnesota you can't be charged until you're 10. And then took 5 proven juvenile crime prevention programs and said, okay, do we save money? And of course had to outline all of the reasons why it's a good thing to prevent crime, which seemed kind of obvious to me. But you know, when you're doing a dissertation, you've got to do the whole thing. And I found out that every program that was proven actually came out with a net taxpayer cost saved, which I didn't know. I mean, well, that's the whole point of a dissertation. You don't know what it's going to come out to be. Now, my numbers are so conservative, it's just ridiculous. But I didn't want anybody to be able to point to it and say, oh, you inflated that to make it look good. And anyhow, I mean, it's honestly, it is worth a read. The data is old at this point. It's from 2004.
It's okay.
I got my doctorate in 2007. But
congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. But I feel so passionately about the fact that I said, you know, there are policymakers that make decisions based on what's right, and they'll do it no matter what. And then there are policymakers that make a decision on how much does it cost. And if it costs a dime, then they're not going to do it. But most of us are in the middle. And the fact of the matter is, the only thing we had when it came to juvenile crime prevention was, I want to do the right thing. The money wasn't there. It didn't talk about that, because we talk about the cost to society, and you had all kinds of information on that. But when we're making decisions about how our dollars are going to be spent, we need to know if there's going to be a return, if somebody's going to be better off because of it.
And I appreciate those remarks, Commissioner Reinhardt. And one of the things that I often, I'm sorry, were you finished?
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I often do in that regard is, because the court systems, many of these places, the 5 that you've talked about, they've never had to actually be accountable in the way that you're suggesting. And one of the first early things that we ask is, what's the cost of a bench warrant? Nobody knows. And what percentage of your calendar is bench warrants when we sit in court, right? And it's like, well, 30, out of 100 cases, 35 of them are bench warrants, people don't show up to court. Every time the gavel goes down, there's a price tag to that, and it's like, it's like a car with a tank full of gas. What do you care what gas costs? It's just delivered to your door every day. It's like, that's just a part of doing business. Actually, no. There should be better ways in which we're doing it.
Well, and I will tell you just one other thing, because the first time out running for office, I had to meet with the editorial boards for the newspapers. And you brought up the issue of labor and changing jobs and so forth.
Repurposing, yeah.
And I have a strong labor background, and so they were like, what are you doing? You're talking about eliminating jobs. And my answer to that was, if we were truly serving everyone to the best of our ability, that would be true. We're not even close. And are you really, seriously, the people that are working in this area, they want to do the best for that family and that child. So giving them the tools and working with other people across departments is a godsend for them. So we aren't doing it. We are working, we have worked so hard in the reorganization, everything that we've done. It's taken us a while, but you know what, we are on the right track, and I am very proud of what we've done. And we've got a ways to go, and we're gonna keep doing it.
Well, some of you guys are gonna be getting calls from people in your positions to say,
learning opportunities that we're trying to promote.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up. So I represent 2 of the 3 zip codes.
Oh, you do? Oh.
Right, so my question is, in this process and community engagement, if we're at the design phase, how are we communicating back to the community that is desperately waiting for outcomes?
Yes, good question. And that's exactly what we started addressing yesterday, was when we talk about design, we want to design with and not for. And we want to make sure that we're quite intentional about that and, humble about the fact that we don't have all the answers, right? And especially in terms of proximity to the issues, as you said, you represent 2 of the zip codes. So as part of the learning community, developing an ad hoc group to come back to all of the learning community as to, here's a proposal on how we're going to ensure that voices from those zip codes are included, which also includes an investment in time of community coaching.
Right.
Before we start, we're not going to just tokenize people and put them around the table and expect to say, okay, now you're going to help us design, because that would be insulting and not respectful. So it's developing that process that'll be part of this year's work as well, to get to where James was saying in terms of the designing, and even understanding what each of the structures are ostensibly meant to serve and what they're meant to bring to the table. Who are the different positions, what that means, how to be at the table with power, to be power with power, and understand community as power at the table as well. And that's part of one of the conundrums, is being able to share power. And so we really appreciate and do, again, another beacon that you all are for the country is in the Transforming Systems Together, is really demonstrating that sharing of the power. And with the concept that has not yet been designed, but because of all of the foundational work that you have been doing over the last 2 decades almost, as you have said, Commissioner Reinhardt, and being tenacious in that regard, to be able to demonstrate we can overcome that conundrum of not sharing power with the community.
So I just wanted to say that we have phases to build this. So the first was the county. We brought together a collaboration. Commissioner Carter, we were thankful that she would come, and could we get department heads to come? Because this isn't a philanthropic effort in the sense that there isn't money being dumped here to do this. And so the first phase was to build a safe and trusting place that the county folk could meet with some community people. We had representation from folks. Now we get to the zip codes. Now we have to bring in the city people. So we brought in the city council people and some other city departments, the police chief. Now we're talking about bringing in that broader community voice that you're talking about, but we have to phase it in terms of how we're going to bring it in, rather than have everybody there at the same time.
I totally appreciate that. I think it's, we have to build so that we're
Right.
ready to listen. I think that
Right.
as,
That's a
someday
great
if
way
we
to put it.
add to our values here at the county, I fully believe that solutions come from the community, but we have to build the framework so we're ready to hear those solutions. The community knows what they need, they know what their problems are, and they know how to fix it. We have to just be able to be ready and then build our infrastructure to support the community's needs. So I really appreciate it. I'm really hopeful. I think the zip codes were well chosen, obviously.
They were chosen by these people.
Well, but it is like the greatest need, and I see it every day, and I see my community asking, right, and begging for anything different. This graphic is like
Dysfunction junction.
right? I mean, not you, but just like, and it isn't. It's like systematically to access services. It's like, I don't even know where to start, and then people give up, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, it's just too hard. And so to figure out how do we do that so that we don't have to talk about kids in detention. I mean, it's just gross that it's even in our language. And that we go to how do we resource parents before their kids get there, right? It's like when we went out to Totem Town and saw those boys. It's terrible.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to make certain to call on Zachary, who had indicated a need to make a comment. And so I want to call on you now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. Just in general, I think, just think about the first steps and the way you've identified that. It's taken a long time to be able to bring department leadership together and have them recognize to what degree they are a part of the institutional racism that our county is. And so I think to respond directly to your question, it's almost like, where is the community in this conversation? We've had a few community members at the table, and there was an intention to bring some in, but I honestly think that, our departments weren't ready to even kind of like have a conversation and understanding what could be different. And furthermore, is there a reason for any difference in the first place? And so the work that's been done to create a space where everyone sitting down has already recognized like the common narrative, or the things that don't even need to be said anymore, are at a point where it's just we're way beyond. We're way beyond. And so as we think about engaging the community, there's still work to do in preparing the community to be a part of that conversation, to ensure that the community is informed. It's been a privilege for us to go to Montgomery and spend half a day over and over again, 18 times, or however many times it's met, like maybe it's 9 times or something like that. But just to talk about where we are as a county, where we are as a nation, and how structural racism has kind of like defined that and built that for us. And I don't think everybody in the community has been a part of that journey as well, or has that information. And so we're definitely taking steps to figure out how exactly we're going to engage the community moving forward. But there was a lot of work that needed to be done to make sure we could all get on the same page in recognizing this is the direction that we want to go as a county.
Thank you so much for that. I really think that there's, just like you had to bring the staff to a point that they're ready, the community in another way is going to have to get to a point where they believe we're ready and they trust us, because they've heard it all before. You're going to do something different and nothing's changed, right? And so Yeah, I really appreciate the care and even though it takes a long time.
Yes.
Every step of the way is worth it if we get to where we actually want to go.
And I know we don't need to do this, but we just make an open invitation. We, this year for the first time, have scheduled our meetings for the whole year, because we used to do it as we went. So now you'll know if you want to send any of your staff. You don't have to come for the whole 3-hour barbecue, but you can definitely stop by and come and see what's happening and experience what we're talking about.
Right.
So
And I just wanted to qualify that too, because commissioners can also come.
Yes,
You know,
well, I
this is
didn't-
in
I
the
wasn't-
beginning of
yeah.
the journey.
Right.
But, we are welcome at the table. I want to call on Commissioner Fetham.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming today. So I'm the newest one here, so I wasn't here 18 months ago when this started, but I think it's interesting how Victoria mentioned she ran on this in her first race, and Mary Jo's next to me is like, I ran on this, and yeah, this is what I talked, coming from a human services background, this is what I talked about a lot. And we are the suburban commission. So I think I don't think we should be afraid of that, the suburbs, because they get it. More than we think they would, they get it. You know, some maybe approach it from the fiscal angle, like we are wasting our money here, we should move it up. But others, I talked to so many people who have like touched the system in one way or another. They've got a relative who was involved in child protection. They've got a child with disabilities, and they've said how hard it is to get what they need. And then a lot of them reflect back, I just think about how much harder it is if I weren't so privileged in my position. So the conversation is happening and people are understanding, and I think they're ready, and I think Mary Jo and Commissioner Reinhardt are ready to bring them with us in this work. So I'm really excited to be here at this time.
Thank you so much for those words, and the way you guys are framing things, we are stealing. Because you guys are saying them very well, right? You guys are used to like these quick things again. And Commissioner Reinhardt, I'm sure you know when you went through those 5, when you were talking about 5 agencies, when we showed the dysfunction junction with the ribbon and stuff, if you have anybody chart out their adult or youth justice system, even people in the system get confused where it is. I mean, it is really, it's been built up in that way. And so I think that that's the case everywhere, as you say. So yes, thank you.
I know that the county manager had something, and
Well,
Victoria.
I just wanted to comment that if you are interested in my dissertation.
We are.
I checked to make sure it was in here. If you go to my page on the Ramsey County leadership page, you go to my bio, and it has a link that says dissertation. You click on it, and it's there.
Thank you.
Yep, we read everything. Thank you.
Test next week.
We'll be ready for it.
County manager O'Connor.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I just wanted to make one other cross connection too on the infrastructure side. This is an internal wrestling thing that we're going through, but we're going through for the right reasons. It's always a good discussion. So I think it was 2 weeks ago at the executive team meeting on Wednesday, 2 weeks ago Wednesday, we talked about, so Lydia came in, Lydia Gurm was leading the process around our community engagement funds and how to spend that across service teams and how to make sure we're not just doling it out, right? That $1 million goes real fast. It's funny how the board allocates $1 million to community engagement that never existed up from 0, and right away everyone goes, well, that's not enough money. I just find it to be and I both agree, but also it's like, we didn't even get like a day into it. I mean, and so Lydia started working last year to be ready to hit the ground running this year on a process by which service teams are going through it. So I want to start by saying, first of all, departments are not even eligible to go through individually. It is coming through the executive team members up through to a process that policy and planning is negotiating, which is where the wheel really starts to matter. And so what's happening is each service team right now in a core set of areas, direct engagement with community members being one of those key areas, and another being infrastructure building, are able to put in proposals for what do the next 6 months look like for you, what are you asking for? And then we're gonna do it again for the second half of the year. And so part of that will be, we'll share what that looks like as a list comes together. The first deadline for, I think, service team to submit and run through our process is like in about a month. And so we're actually at senior management team next week is a big part of the agenda. And so, but alongside that, Elizabeth is putting in a countywide request from the policy director position on infrastructure building to go beyond who's been sitting with Burns, because our capacity remains limited. And the spirited conversation we had is to not take too much money to build our own while forgetting to put the money out into service in the community on key projects. that will be a natural give and tug. There is no perfect answer or formula for us today, but I just want to make that connection. As we think about our own wheel of the 4 initiatives proposed in this budget around TST, community engagement, racial equity, you start to see how all of these are being intentionally blended, and so we keep them distinct from a budgeting purpose, but in terms of implementation, they're all, this is the year it all starts to hopefully come together.
Thank you for pointing that out. So let me see, I've got Commissioner McGuire and, okay, thank you.
You want me to go? Just a couple of thoughts also, because this is such exciting work, and just thanks, Zach. I mean, thank everyone in this room for all the work. Just to give a couple of other examples that we're working on, which I just see every day, just to acknowledge this is hard work within each service area, but then there's service areas that need to talk to each other, and we have active living, which is public health, and parks and roads and parks and, active living.
That's interesting.
So, so we're really trying to make sure we're crossing service areas. So while we're trying to do, within the service teams, which is a lot of departments in themselves, we really are working, and I just want to put a shout out to the group that's working on really working with connecting service teams then. So, and then also the prenatal to 3 work that is crossing all the county work with our Pritzker grant and with Nancy Lee, and we've had a few community meetings on this, and the community is so ready to be engaged, and we're all like, we need to be ready ourselves to hear it. So I'm just affirming, the need to be ready to hear that, and the need to be ready to work with community, because the community's like, what can we do? We want to be there. We want to help you. We can be resources. And Nancy's like, we got to get ourselves, in order for us to engage the community. And so I'm affirming getting ourselves in order, and not, as we've said, as you said, stronger, faster now. The sooner the better. But we need to do it right. So we're just seeing it in so much of what we're doing in the whole juvenile justice field, in the early childhood field, in the recreation field. So it's just so we're just seeing so many connections. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there's just all these different places where I'm seeing this kind of work and the need for this kind of work.
So
you go ahead.
No, you're going to finish? Go ahead.
No, I'm going to ask for your final comments. It seems as though we've made some bits around the table to both understand better and also to affirm the work that we have been doing. I'd love to ask you to make final comments, turn to County Manager, Deputy Allwood, and others who may have comments as well, Williams and others. But we want to get to a point where we close out in good timing.
Yes, this was, thank you all for the time you gave us.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just want to thank you guys. So it's just a moment personally. So I'm getting near the end of my career, and when I started my career, it was Central Park 5, if it bleeds, it leads, super predators, lock them up, throw away the key. And I always imagined that we could get to a place where a conversation was like this. This is why I started the Burns Institute. It's been a pleasure to run it for 20 years and to work with the team we work with. But you guys gave us the opportunity. I went around the country speaking. I go all over the country speaking, and internationally as well. That can we find some place that has that'll just put their little foot in the water to say maybe we could do something differently. And I have to give Commissioner Carter big ups and other people here when she said, I think we can. And so I want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to come here. We call them learning communities, because I didn't think we'd get this far. I thought we'd hit a brick wall. So I really want to thank you guys, and hope that you keep track of what we're doing, for you to realize that other people in the country are watching what you're doing, and we're taking what we've learned here in these 18 months, the exercises, what worked, what didn't work, where did we lose the group, where did the group step in, where do we bring in the community, how do we pick the zip codes, what do we do about the suburbs? All of those questions are coming from in those other places, and we can say, well, while we were in Ramsey, this is what we did. And so without you guys, we would not be able to do this, and this is the most fulfilling part, personally, for my career, and it has given our office a whole new way of being what our vision was. So on behalf of all of us at the Burns Institute, I thank you and appreciate how much further we can walk on that road, on that journey.
Thank you.
We're moving toward a close. I just want to turn to county manager and others to find out if they're final.
Madam Chair, I'll leave at the point that it was Christmas Eve in 2017 when we thought we were being left out of the remaining deep end cohort with the NEKC Foundation where Burns worked. I mean, that's the place that our work was in at that point in time. And begging to not let that happen and come back in February of 2018 with the board and do a full data deep dive. I just want to, so the arc, the leadership here at this table and the arc of progress has not been linear on this work. And it's nothing short of striking to think about that timeline for where we went from not even being on the chart to some of what we're now seeing. And I'm heartened by that when I think about that timeline to what we could accomplish in the coming 2 years together and beyond, particularly as we bring community in. And that is a testament to the leaders that have stepped up. I find my job is to simply find ways to say yes in scary moments, and I think that's something where we're all in that together to continue to try and find ways. But I think our job is to continue to try and meet every challenge that we face along the way, because our bets are proven right every time.
And I just have to say, Paul, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Paul Haywood, Deputy County Manager for Health and Wellness. And I have lots of different reactions to this afternoon's discussions. And I'm going to probably take a little bit of a personal tack to start and say that when I first came to the county and got introduced to the Burns learning community, my initial experiences weren't necessarily as great. And I remember going up to James at one of the early meetings and say, hey, this feels like a lot of what I've experienced as a black man in America. We can get together to talk about the pernicious impacts of racial injustice. And it feels like only the victims are having indignation, and everyone else kind of sits and listens. And I remember there were consoling words, and then there was an attempt to address that. And I put this on the table because I think it's really very important that we have a partner like the Burns Institute that can recognize and understand, that it can be personally, traumatic and difficult, for the people who are really, victims of a system that has been, like I heard James say this morning, and I've heard it in other places too, that is actually doing the thing that it was designed to do, and we have a responsibility. And at the risk of sounding a bit hyperbolic, I'll say, hey, the efforts that we are expending towards achieving race equity is really dealing with an existential threat. It's really trying to eliminate a threat that literally threatens our very existence. There's nothing more important to do. There's nothing more difficult in some sense, but it is really the most important thing. I have to also say that since that first experience, I've had quite a few other experiences, including that trip to Montgomery, which was painful in ways to kind of look at the history and the evolution of our race-based criminal injustice system, and also to see the legacy or the monument to lynchings, that occurred in this country. There were 4,000 something people that got lynched. But there was also some very hopeful things, particularly as we engage in discussions with our counterparts from Lucas County, Toledo. And we could see in some ways where, I felt proud to be a representative of Ramsey County, because we could see where we had made strong strides. We were really moving ahead, and there was a certain kind of painfulness that come from just looking at, what other people were struggling with now that we've kind of moved past that. So there was a high point for me when we sat around, all of the Ramsey team sat around and did a scenario. Talked through a scenario that was based on transforming systems together. And we looked at ways that we can be more preventative, looked at ways that we can integrate services and processes to ensure that we, I think the exact scenario was a mother who, for the want of childcare supports, ended up having kids in the justice system and, you know, various other.
Child welfare.
Child welfare.
Yeah, exactly.
Impacted housing,
Yeah.
and this was a real case scenario.
It wasn't, okay. And by the way, you know, you had reached out before we had that
To see if we could-
convening, see, you know, TSD could be used as a model for that.
Mhm.
But it was very illustrative to me. And one of your questions was, you know, how does this actually come to life? And I'd say, you know, some of this is actually taking root, because from being in that discussion, I came back, you know, really empowered and encouraged to start making bold steps to create the kind of structures within, you know, that dysfunction junction that was depicted, to make sure that we are actually looking for those opportunities to be preventative and to, you know, to move across administrative barriers to be able to achieve that. So I'm really excited for the next however long it's going to be, and you know, really think that this is something that we need to, you know, stay committed to and involve at a very high level.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I echo, you know, what Paul said, and just will, you know, add some personal observations. It's been very, very professional and professionally and personally rewarding being part of this learning community. Sitting down with my peers, not only within the county, but you know, other organizations, school district, you know, the city, and you know, it's been, you know, I've been in this business for 31 years. Most of that 31 years spent, you know, supporting, building, defending, you know, the current status quo system, and so now I find myself, you know, in this next phase of my career, being part of, you know, deconstructing and reconstructing, and it actually excites me. It's kind of scary, you know, it's energizing, it's exciting, and it's all of those things. So, and I think it's helped, you know, prepare all of us for the work that we have ahead of us with working with community and empowering community through transforming systems together.
So I'm exactly right here, and I just want to acknowledge how helpful you've been in this entire process and managing the different balls, trying to get all of these groups together for the onboard meetings, as well as taking care of thoughtfulness and preparing agendas, providing resources and aiding those agendas. I just want to say a very, very big thank you to you.
Yes,
Thank you for the opportunity.
absolutely. Madam Chair, if I might.
Please.
May I, thank you. Just in my closing, I would echo what everyone else has said. I dug out some old notes as I was going through the timeline in terms of our history of our engagement with Ramsey County. We had the privilege and honor to be engaged with you all since 2005. But in 2010, post the readiness assessment consultation that Commissioner Carter talked about earlier, the Burns Institute facilitated a stakeholder retreat, which included, I believe, some of you all that were here at the time. And I just want to echo, part of the retreat included sharing fears about what might go wrong, right? The premortem, if you will, but also the hope. And one of those hopes was, I hope that we have the courage and strength to stay the course no matter what. And you all have, and you have even before then, and that's what I'm hearing now, that commitment to continue and staying the course, and no matter what, continuing in this matter. So again, as James had said, on behalf of the W. Haywood Burns Institute, it's just been very humbling to learn alongside with you all on how we can transform these systems together.
Great work.
Thank you.
The last thing I'll say is that this truly has been a partnership. And I want to appreciate that you came to us, that you inquired whether this fit Ramsey County. You know, and just know that it was only because this board had done some real deep work to unpack where we wanted to go and to head staff in a direction that our county manager and planning director, who I have to say thank you to, because if it didn't fit, this would not have happened here, but could clearly see the alignment of the work that you are doing to prepare systems for transformation and the work that we are doing to transform our system. And it has been a wonderful partnership together, and we look forward to continuing that. Thank you all.
Thank you very much,
Thank you so much for all
everyone.
this time. Thank you.